So, welcome everybody to today's HMPPS Statement of Operational Evidence Needs launch event. From now on, I will refer to it as the SOEN because it is quite a mouthful to keep saying the full title. My name is Sinead Bloomfield and I am the Academic Engagement Lead for HMPPS. So I'm absolutely delighted to see so many of you here today to hear about the SOEN. Before we go into the full event, just a few housekeeping to go through, just to make sure that everyone gets the most out of today's event. So we are recording the event, so do feel free to keep your camera off if you don't want to be captured in the recording. And we will share the recording with you after the event. So hopefully if you miss anything, you can go back and refer to it later. We do ask that you can keep your microphone on mute as people are speaking today, just to enable there to not be any background noise or interference as we go through the session. You will hopefully be able to see that there is a Q&A function on Teams, so please do use that throughout today to give us any questions that you'd like us to address when we get to the Q&A section at the end of the session. Some of you have already submitted some questions in advance when you registered, so we will go through those as we when we get to the Q&A section. And also, when we do get to that part, please do raise your hand if you'd like to come in and ask your question personally. So in terms of today, we have a number of speakers. We will be starting by Ben Charnock, who will formally open this launch event. Then Nick Bellamy and myself will talk through the SOEN and how we can work together going forwards. Then we have Grace Fleck, who is going to talk about the Ministry of Justice areas of research interest. And then finally, we have Karen Morgan, who's going to talk about the National Research Committee. And then at the end, we will have a question and answer session where you can ask questions and share reflections at that point. Because we've got quite a bit to get through and we haven't got a lot of time for this session today, we'll go through all of the presentations and then we will cover any of your questions in the Q&A section. So as we're going through the presentations, feel free to add a burning question that comes up in the Q&A function, or write it down, whatever works for you, but we'll come to them at the end. So with that, all housekeeping done, I am delighted to introduce Ben Charnock, who is the Executive Director of Strategy, Performance and Standards within HMPPS and has evidence within his area of responsibility. So over to you, Ben.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And look, genuinely really grateful for so many colleagues and partners joining us today. And look, I wanted to just take a few minutes to kind of reflect on the importance of this event and start by saying, actually, this is a time of really genuine opportunity within HMPPS. You've all seen the passing of the Sentencing Act, publication of the Leveson Review recently, and the real focus on our future probation service and achieving a sustainable workload in probation. And what this really gives us is a route to basically get beyond the challenges we've seen in capacity over the last few years, and to really now put our attention on actually how do we drive improvement in the system? How do we learn from partners in doing that? And that is the real focus of the organisation and ministers at the moment, of actually how do we have that relentless focus on performance improvement in the organisation and a focus on the outcomes that we want to deliver. And again, many of you will have followed that actually, a really genuinely good settlement for MOJ as part of the spending review, which gives us 3 years of certainty in really driving that change. And right at the heart of how we're going to drive improvement and how we're going to do it is how both across the front line and headquarters, we drive an improvement in practice are identifying and sharing best practice across the system and really building our evidence base and our understanding of actually where can we have the most impact in the system, and how do we act on that evidence. So the SOEN, sorry, I won't even attempt to say the full name, is really both a sort of a document and a statement of intent from the organization about how we are going to focus on improving practice and where we need that evidence to help support those decisions and that drive across the business. And many of you will be familiar with the MOJ areas of research interest, which I assume we also shorten to the ARI, which is designed, basically the SOEN is designed to complement that. So that's obviously an MOJ level view on actually the data and evidence we need. The SOEN is all about actually within HMPPS, where do we need to focus on that practice improvement? So we'd strongly encourage everyone to be looking at both of those documents as they're thinking about this. And in the SOEN, what we try and do is identify the gaps that we have in evidence, how that can align with research and operational priorities, and really offer opportunities for collaborative research between HMPPS and academic partners. The final thing that I wanted to say is that this is a sort of living, breathing, collaborative commitment from us. And it is going to continue to evolve as the context and evidence base develops. So we would genuinely encourage everyone to approach this and see this as a sort of shared effort to drive better decisions and outcomes across HMPPS. So with that in mind, really genuinely do encourage people to, participate, ask us questions, sort of push back, challenge, and make the most of the time today. And can I just say a genuine, once again, massive thank you to everyone who's turned up today, both from the academic community, from across HMPPS, and for the team organising. And really, really looking forward to hearing your views over the course of the discussion today. Team, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks, Ben. I think we're handing over to me now. I'm only going to take a really brief moment to introduce myself, but also to welcome everyone to this event. And then I'm going to hand over to Sinead, who's going to take you through most of the rest of the event. So hello, everyone. It's really nice to see so many people have turned up today, which is brilliant. My name is Nick Bellamy. I'm the head of the Insights team. And the Insights team sits alongside the evidence-based practice team, and we are both situated in HMPPS HQ, sitting under Ben's directorate, as he said. I just wanted to take a really brief minute just to explain where the idea for this statement originated and where we hope for it to go. Ben's already touched on much of this, but it was around 18 months ago. And we were within HMPPS developing our 5 core operational strategies, and Sinead's going to talk to you a bit more about that later. And the evidence and insights team, we were asked to support the strategy leads to review the evidence base that sat behind each of those strategies. And it was such a useful exercise to do, because not only did it highlight where evidence is already quite strong, but it also highlighted to us where we could really strengthen that evidence to develop and improve our confidence in terms of delivery. It was also around the same time that the MOJ were scoping out the revised ARI, which was published last year. So it was really good timing for this piece of work. And it was through conversations with MOJ that we agreed that it would be useful to have a separate statement for HMPPS, which really drilled down into the critical operational evidence gaps at a more granular level than can be contained in the ARI, but they really are complementary documents, as Ben has said. And also, we've got a huge focus on performance improvement at the moment, and we really want to make sure that's done in the most evidence-informed way. So this is new. It's not perfect, we know that, but it's a real starter for 10, a starter for a conversation with you in the research community, and it will evolve over time. What we really hope to do through this statement is to strengthen those collaborative relationships, to co-design research, make sure that it meets our needs, but also make sure that the relevant findings are then fed back into the areas of the business to make sure that they influence our strategic decision making and operational frontline practice. So that's the background. I'm now going to hand over to Sinead to take you through the rest of the event.
Thank you, Nick. So, so as Nick mentioned, the SOEN is aligned with our HMPPS 5 core strategies. And we're not going to go through all the questions that are within the SOEN today. You can have a look at that at your leisure, but we thought we'd take a little bit of time this morning to give you a high-level summary of what those 5 core strategies are. So these aren't in any particular order, but we'll start with public protection. So HMPPS's vision for public protection is to empower people to make positive changes and choices within their lives during their time in our care and beyond. And the public protection strategy focuses on 3 priorities: better risk assessment, better risk management, and better risk communication, alongside and aligned and balanced with rehabilitation support to ensure and to support reducing the causes of reoffending. And so the public protection strategy and the rehabilitation strategy are quite interlinked. They're standalone, but they're also very complementary to each other. So within the rehabilitation strategy, by working together, believing in change, foster and being evidence-led, approach to rehabilitation will help us to reduce reoffending. And within HMPPS, we believe that everyone has a responsibility to create the right conditions, foster the relationships, and provide the right services to ensure effective rehabilitation. And rehabilitation supports and informs and strengthens our risk management and safety activity in order to ensure that we protect the public. So as you can see, those 2 strategies work very, very closely together. We've also got youth custody strategy. So we want to ensure that every child in our care is safe and supported and strives for a better future. So there is a focus on quality education, service provision, and fostering those relationships with children, working towards reforming the estate and developing our evidence base within youth custody, and addressing the wider system issues around the voice of the child and disparities. In order to make sure that we can facilitate public protection, rehabilitation, and our work within youth justice, we also need to think about the people that work in our organisation. So we have a specific people strategy, and the vision is that all of our staff, regardless of where they work and what role they undertake, that they're proud to work for HMPPS, that they feel supported, included and competent in their duties on a day-to-day basis, that they feel that they're constantly developing both professionally and personally, and that we create a modern offer for our staff that ensures that HMPPS is a psychologically safe place to be, is a psychologically safe employer, and that we recruit and retain the right people with the right skill set, competence and values to undertake all of the work that we need to do. And then last but not least, there is estates and infrastructure strategy. So we want a safe, secure, sustainable and resilient estate within HMPPS. And this particular strategy is guided by 4 principles. These are providing safe, secure and decent conditions for all, securing long-term funding, harnessing technology and evidence-based decision making. And the Estates and Infrastructure Strategy acknowledges risks which include unforeseen changes in demand and supply, the wider criminal justice system, and it also incorporates climate change within that strategy. Now, I know from how when you registered for today's event that people have an interest in at least one, if not multiple, of these areas within your day-to-day work as well. And as you go through the SOEN, you may have a look at some of these strategies and think that, oh, I wonder why this particular research question or this particular area isn't covered under the strategy. So at this point, I would remind you that the SOEN is that shorter to medium term operational evidence gaps. It may well be that some of the areas you think might be missing in the SOEN are actually in the ARI because they're medium to longer term areas that are covered within the ARI. But at this point, I would also say that if there is something that you think should be in the SOEN and it's not in the ARI, then we really want to hear from you. We appreciate that this is the first iteration. This is the first time we're doing this on a HMPPS operational perspective. So we really do want to hear from you. So if there is anything that you think should be in there that isn't, drop us a line. We will give you details of how you can get in contact with us at the end of the session. And we will add some things into the SOEN and we'll share the final version with you when we share the recording at the end of after today's event. Similarly, there might be work that you're already undertaking or that you've completed that fit and aligns to these 5 core strategies. We want to hear about that work as well. We want to learn from you. We want to collaborate. We want to work together, share learning to make sure that HMPPS is evidence-led and is being driven by the evidence. So anything that you do that is of interest that you think aligns to these 5 core strategies, do let us know and get in touch. So what are the benefits of the SOEN? So one of the key things is about strengthening our partnerships and working together. So HMPPS aims to build strong partnerships with academics, researchers, and practitioners to address evidence gaps. We all have our own individual piece of the puzzle, the jigsaw puzzle that we bring to the table. If we work together, we can build that picture together and create some great things together. So that's one of the key things about the SOEN. It's our way of being able to all be on the same page, know what we're all working to, and collaborating together. Another thing that following today is our introduction. It's a hello, let's work together, let's see who we all are. But following today, we aim to have some engagement events and forums where we can get together. If you've got a particular interest in one of the strategies, for instance, we can have a targeted event linked to that about how we share learning and information across everybody. But also if you get in touch with us, we can link you up with the relevant strategy leads within HMPPS and other business teams so that you can work together to create the right research agendas to meet the evidence gaps that we've identified and some of the ones that you may well provide us after today. And we can work together to build that evidence base. HMPPS fosters an open learning culture where information and insights flow freely across the justice system to improve our practice. And the SOEN will help us do that because we'll all be working to meet those evidence gaps together. And by incorporating academic, operational, and practitioner perspectives, that will strengthen the research relevance and applicability across the board. So I've mentioned working together probably quite a number of times so far in the last sort of 2 minutes alone, but it really is about us working together with a joint purpose and a joint goal. So by us working together, we can ensure that the research that we undertake is both theoretically sound and practically relevant from the real world perspective, and enhancing our decision making and our practice within HMPPS. We'll learn from each other. We've all got, like I say, we're all our own little jigsaw piece of the puzzle, and we work together to build that picture together. What we want in HMPPS, and as Ben mentioned at the beginning, we want to work together. So we want a joint effort between our leaders, practitioners, academics, researchers, to address our operational evidence gaps. And it's really important that we hear from you in order to do that. It's so lovely to see so many of you here today. And so this is the starting point on this journey together. We have been doing collaborations for a number of years, but we could get better at it. And this is a way of us being able to do that going forward. And if we have a shared commitment to improving our practice, both from the evidence perspective as well as from the practical and operational perspective, we will drive continuous improvement, public protection, and to improve public protection and rehabilitation outcomes in the criminal justice system. We know this is the first starting point. This will evolve. We will get better as we go through. And we do want to hear from you. And following today and you getting in touch with us as we go through the next 12 to 18 months, we'll be liaising with you to enhance the SOEN as we engage in this process going forward. At this stage, that's all I'm going to say, I think, but I will now hand over to Grace Fleck from the Evidence and Partnerships Hub in MOJ to talk you through the areas of research interest, which hopefully a number of you will already be aware of, but as a refresher. So over to you, Grace.
Oh, thanks so much, Sinead. Hi, everyone. My name is Grace Fleck. I work in the Evidence and Partnerships Hub in the Ministry of Justice, and our team is responsible for the MOJ Areas of Research Interest, or ARI, or ARI, or however you like to refer to it. But this really underpins all of our academic partnerships, activities, external engagement, as well as shaping things within the department as well. If you just pop to the next slide, please, Sinead. Great, thanks. So the latest ARI was published in September 2025, following a complete update to the previous version from 2020, which hopefully lots of you would have been familiar with. So the document sets out our priority high-level areas of research interest as a department. It's essentially a statement of our medium to long-term priority evidence needs, and it signals where new research can have the most impact for policy and practice over the next kind of 3 to 5 years. So we use the ARI as a basis to collaborate with academic researchers and research councils to really shape the external research programs going on to be in line with our evidence needs so they can have the most impact. And all government departments are required to publish an ARI in line with recommendations from the 2015 Nurse Review. So this is actually our third version since 2018. What I will say about this version of the ARI, as with all of them, it's not an exhaustive list of all evidence gaps, sort of similarly to the point Sinead was making, but it's intended to showcase our high priority evidence needs at high level, and be used as the start of a conversation. So on the right-hand side, you can see that we've also published an infographic alongside it to summarise the themes within the ARI. ARI around the 4 pillars of public protection, victims and defendants, legal services, and civil family and tribunals. I will go into this in slightly more detail. Pop to the next slide, please, Sinead. I will just start by walking through a little bit of background of how we developed the ARI this time round. So we started off by referring to the best practice, which is set out by the Government Office for Science. And we then undertook a systematic assessment of the evidence landscape across the full MOJ policy remit. So trying to understand what evidence we had and what our critical evidence needs and gaps were. So following this, we did an in-depth consultation exercise, sort of far and wide, with our analytical and policy leads within the department to really understand the gaps within their areas from their point of views. And we're keen to ensure that the ARI publication not only reflected our own priorities within MOJ, but also representative of MOJ arms-led bodies and agencies. So we also did consultation with colleagues in HMPPS, as well as HMCTS, Inspectorate of Probation, Youth Justice Board, Sentencing Council, and others. So it was a very kind of thorough and methodical approach to get the publication out there. And once we had drafted the questions, we then structured the ARI in line with the strategic objectives for the justice system, which is why you'll see it split into the sort of 4 pillars. And I will take you through a little bit more of the detail under them now. If you can flip to the next slide, please, Sinead. So theme 1 is the longest theme and the one probably most relevant for the event today. It focuses on protecting the public and reducing reoffending with a sustainable and effective prison and probation service. So the 10 sort of cubes on the screen represent the different sections within this theme. So for example, release, prison safety and security, youth justice, all huge topics within them, you know, in their own right. And within each of these themes, there are specific research questions in the publication. So you'll likely be able to recognise your own work area within one of these ARI themes. And we would really encourage everyone to read through the publication in your own time and look at the more detailed research questions within your own area of interest. Just to call out a few examples to give a flavour of the type of questions in there for anyone who's not had a look yet. So we have questions in the section ranging from what do we know about the long-term effectiveness of probation sentence management for different cohorts, through to things like how can we maximise resilience of the prison estate to the impacts of natural hazards and climate change. Just a couple of examples. There's a whole host of detailed questions in there for you to have a look at. If we pop to the next slide, please, Sinead. Thanks. So the second theme is around ensuring timely and just outcomes for victims and defendants through a modern and efficient criminal court system. As you can see, this theme is split into 2 key sections around that modern and efficient court system and topics around victims and witnesses specifically. And if we pop onto the next slide, I won't go through these in too much detail. So the third theme is around upholding the rule of law at home and abroad. Within this theme, we have 5 subsections, as you can see on the screen. Just as an example to give a flavour of the type of questions, this is things like how can innovation in legal technology improve productivity and cost effectiveness, efficiency of different services in the legal sector. Those kind of questions would sit within this section. And finally, if we go into the next slide, the 4th theme is around delivering accessible and timely civil, family and administrative justice. So again, we have the 5 sort of subsections on there. If we pop onto the next slide, yes, this is where we have the nice animations coming through. Thanks, Sinead. So this is our cross-cutting themes, which we have a whole section on within the areas of research interest. And this is here because given the sort of complex and interconnected nature of the justice system, There's several system-wide themes and issues that really cut across jurisdictions and policy areas and kind of could apply across the board through different lenses. And these cross-cutting themes are in there to provide lenses through which we can look kind of horizontally how these themes intersect with the vertical ARI questions. So is this all of the information on the slide? Go back one. Thanks, Sinead, that's perfect. So just for example, obviously we're really interested in mental health as an example, but we couldn't add that onto every single question within the document without it becoming completely unwieldy. So this is here to demonstrate the cross-cutting themes that apply across the board as a way to do this. So it's quite an interesting section to have a look at in the publication. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we've also included, as with the 2020 publication as well, but an updated version of the analytical and research methods that we're particularly interested in. We really want to engage with the research community, not only around those specific questions, but also to enhance our own scientific capabilities, capacity to explore how innovative methods could be applied to a justice research and analysis context, particularly including the use of AI, for example. And another thing worth mentioning here is that for the 2025 ARI, we do include a greater focus on STEM than previous iterations. So you will see more specific questions and areas of interest around natural and physical sciences, as well as the social sciences. So we've worked closely with the MOJ Science Office to make sure this is sort of covered within the 2025 ARI. So, for example, you'll find questions in there around emerging technologies, things like prevention of drones and wastewater surveillance and things like that may be of interest. And then just got one final slide here just to talk a bit about the wider context of the Evidence and Partnerships Hub. Won't go into a huge amount of detail here, but as mentioned, the area of research interest really underpins all of our work as a hub. It depends on all of our sort of external partnership work, as well as our internal MOJ sort of setting directions. So there's a whole range of knowledge exchange activities internally and externally, and importantly, a lot that sits on that kind of boundary. So, for example, internally, we produce things like guidance and resources and ad hoc support and advice to help colleagues with their academic engagement and shaping things around the most important sort of critical evidence needs. And then a lot of external activity, things like attending external seminars and conferences, writing blog posts and articles, having that sort of external reach into the academic and research community outside our four walls. But as I say, so much of that sits on the boundary, and that's really key. So things like bringing fellows into the department through secondments and placements, trying to bring as much expertise as we can into the department, focusing around that areas of research interest. So yes, I think this is a good point to pause, and I will hand over to Karen to talk about the National Research Committee. Thanks.
Great, thanks ever so much, Grace. And hi everybody, I'm Karen Morgan. I am a social researcher, also sitting in the Evidence and Partnerships Hub, and my day-to-day responsibility is overseeing the work of the NRC. And I'm here today to talk about the remit and the process for securing NRC approvals. Sinead, could we move on to the next slide, please? So, in brief, the remit of the NRC is to ensure that any research that's conducted across HMPPS is of high quality, that we address the key research priorities that we've already heard about through the ARI and the SOEN, and again, linking into the point that Sinead was saying, it's really about that continuous improvement to improve the outcomes of those under the care and supervision of HMPPS. So the NRC considers any projects that are looking at using research activity with either HMPPS staff or with offenders. So that can include not just research projects, it can include evaluations, it may also include service reviews or consultations that are happening within prisons, probation regions or HMPPS HQ. I think it's also important just to note that that can be either remote access to the staff or potentially to offenders, as well as kind of the physical access to prisons and probation offices. So within our remit, it's about projects that have specific and clearly defined research questions, where they're applying social research methodology and where qualitative or quantitative data is being generated. It doesn't include any sort of monitoring or adherence to standards. It doesn't include the production of MI reports or statistical bulletins or any kind of one-off data collections, which are not forming part of a research project. There are alternative approval processes within HMPPS and MOJ for other data collections. So that's mainly the sort of a broad overview of sort of the scope and the remit of the NRC. Can we move on to the next slide, please? I just included this slide here just to give you sort of an idea of some of the subject areas that are approved by the NRC, and just to sort of demonstrate that it, you know, the work that we do kind of covers such a wide range and really encompasses all the different areas that are covered by the SOEN. And within the ARI, it is those that are focused on sort of the activity of HMPPS. I think there's any work that goes on within the court side of things, there is approval processes through HMCTS. But yeah, it was really just to demonstrate that you know, we look at all sorts of different subject areas, from sort of management of IPPs, looking through sort of brain injury projects, experience of veterans, experience of, you know, sort of different cohorts of offenders, through to the use of in-cell technology, generic the parole process. I could keep on going on. There's lots of, you know, different interesting subject areas that come across our desks. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the application process. I'm aware that some people may be familiar with NRC and have gone through the process a few times. I'm also conscious there's probably a few people on the call that are not aware of NRC. So we have an online application form now, so that can be accessed through the our gov.uk webpage. The online portal does include a save and return function, because we are aware that it's quite a long application form, so you don't have to complete it all in one go. And all supporting documentation needs to be uploaded with the application prior to submission as well. It's not possible at the moment to be able to share that application form, the online application form, with a research team. It's only one person that can view it and have access to it at a time. So what we have also developed is a Word document that also sits on the on our webpage, which can be used for drafting purposes. So then, you know, the idea being that you can then share that with your research team, or for any students, they may need to share that with their supervisors to get sign off before. Then that information just needs to be then transferred onto the online form and submitted through the online portal. As well as on the gov.uk page, as well as all the access to the application form, there's also guidance that sits alongside it, and that explains the type of information that we're looking for within each of the different sections. There's a few kind of hints and tips about what to look out for within the different sections and sort of within the process overall. There is also guidance on there around our amendment process as well. So once your application has been successful, if you didn't need to make amendments as you're progressing through the study, there's a short Word document that you can complete and then email to us. But all that information you can find on our webpage. Once the application form has been submitted to us, we will then assess the application and then look at whether it is whether it needs to go through a review process by the central team, or whether that it needs to be considered locally as a single site application. So those reviewed by the central NRC team are where an application covers more than one prison or probation region. If the study was commissioned by HMPPS HQ, then it may come through to us, or anything relating to extremism also needs to come through to be reviewed by the central NRC team. Other applications, especially those that are relating just to a single prison or probation region, would be reviewed by that area. And it will be the local lead within that prison or region that would then be in contact with the applicant. I will also just, oh, sorry, Sinead, there was one point that I also wanted just to raise on this one, was around any applications that needed health approvals as well. So if your application relates to health research, you may also need to be mindful of the need for HRA approvals. So what we would be asking is for the researcher to ensure that they've been on the HRA website, on the IRAS tool, to check and see whether additional health approvals are needed. If they are, then you would need to go through and complete the IRAS form, and then that's submitted to us currently at the moment through email, but then the rest of the NRC process would be followed regardless of whether that comes to us on an IRAS or a standard NRC application form. We are working with HRA to look at how that process can be improved, so there may be changes in the future to how health-related research projects are approved, but at the moment they would follow the standard NRC application process, but just not the IRAS form. Okay, we move on to the next slide now, please, Sinead. So this just takes gives you a bit more of a sense of how the application forms are processed once they reach our team. So once an NRC application is submitted to the NRC, as I said, we'll process it, which kind of looks at whether it's going to be kind of a multi-site or needs to be considered by the central team, or whether we need to send it to the regions and the prisons to be reviewed as a single site application. Applications are allocated to a lead reviewer, and though the lead reviewers are members of the government social research profession within MOJ, but they also get sent out to a range of business and policy consultees across MOJ and HMPPS. And the purpose of doing that is so that we get a range of views relating to the project, so we can review from sort of the methodology and the ethics side, but we also get a view from the business as well about how the project may link in with their programmes of work. Or we can get a sense as to whether there's work already going on in that area, and we may be able to link up the applicant with others internally to be able to build on what's already happening. We have the consultees have usually around about 15 working days to be able to review the applications before a review meeting's held. All the applications received within that month are then discussed, and an outcome decision is agreed, and that could be to approve. We could approve with minor modifications. We can reject, or to request further information. And whichever decision is made, we would then write that up as a decision letter, and that gets sent out to applicants. We do work on a monthly basis, so applications received 1 month will then be received, will be then reviewed in the following month. And then to give us time to be able to draft the letter, we would then we would aim to send that out within sort of the following sort of 2 weeks of the next month. So, for example, any applications that we received in January are currently being reviewed for our February board. That board will be held later on this week, and then we would hope to get all the decision letters out within the first couple of weeks of March. What we would do is sometimes we may need additional feedback from other teams, so that decision letter may be slightly delayed, but we would be in touch just to let you know if there is going to be a slight delay. Okay, I think that was all I wanted to say about the NRC process as a whole. So if we can move on to the next slide, which is looking at their review criteria. So all applications are reviewed against these areas that you can see on the screen. I did also want to just flag that there's lots of times when the NRC is referred to as an ethics committee. But I just wanted to dispel that myth that we're not an ethics committee. See, ethics does play a big part of our review process, but our remit is wider than that of a standard ethics committee. We do also link up with the MOJ Ethics Advisory group within the MOJ, and that's just to sort of ensure that any of our advice and guidance is aligned. I'm not going to go into too much detail against each of the different review criteria. You can find a lot more detail on the gov.uk webpage in our guidance documents. But just to kind of go through sort of at a high level, explain kind of why we include all these different areas as part of our review. So the key one, I guess, for this session is looking at kind of how the study links with any MOJ HMPPS priorities, such as the ARI and the SOEN, so we can identify kind of how that project is going to address one of the known evidence gaps. It also links in with what we've got listed as the third area for review, which is existing research. So it's looking at what additionality that project is going to bring to the evidence base. We also look at the resource demands as well for the study, and whether those are proportionate and whether they are doable within the current landscape at the moment. We're very much aware of the pressures on the front line, so we just need to ensure that any research projects are not going to place an unreasonable demand on frontline staff, either to help to facilitate that project or for the staff time if staff are to be participants within a study. So we would be looking for the researcher to have a good understanding and appreciation of all the resource demands that will be placed on HMPPS should their study be approved. We also look at the methodology, so that's to assess whether the research questions can be answered, can be addressed from the proposed methodology. So we may need to look at sort of the sampling approach, data collection, analysis, if there's any plans to access any HMPPS or MOJ data, whether that seems reasonable. We would also be looking for the applicants to have an appreciation of the risks and the limitations attached to their project as well, and what mitigations they have got in place to be able to minimise the impact of those risks. Moving on, we have a section looking at the data protection and security. I mean, this is not to replace the need for any DPIAs or any data sharing agreements. This is just to give us kind of an indication that the researchers have considered how data is going to be handled, and just to flag if there's any particular areas of concern as part of the NRC review. However, before you're project can go ahead, you will need to ensure that any relevant DPIAs or data sharing agreements have been put in place. Moving on to the ethics section. So this is looking at not just the standard ethics across all social research projects, such as informed consent, but also kind of any specific ethics related to working with this particular population. So, for example, it's about how you're going to manage kind of the limits to confidentiality, any particular specific vulnerabilities, especially for those that are in custody, how any distress might be managed, and linking in with prison and or probation support services as relevant. An important part of the ethics section is making sure that you've included your informed consent and consent form and your information sheet as well. So if you're planning on contacting individuals directly, so that we can just double check and make sure that all the information that would be expected in those sheets are included. Finally, we move on to the researcher skills and competency. This is just for a check to ensure that the research or the research team has got the appropriate skills and experience to be able to undertake the project as outlined in the NRC application. We're very conscious that there's lots of early career researchers that apply to the NRC who may be still gaining those skills. So that's where we would ask for details of their supervisor to make sure that they have the appropriate supervision in place to help support them as they work through their project. Could we move on to the next slide, please? Which I think is the final one. Okay, so I'm very aware that that's very much a whistle-stop tour through the NRC, our remit, and kind of a very high-level overview of our approvals process. As I said a couple of times, there's more information that can be found on our gov.uk webpage, or please send us an email at nationalresearch@justice.gov.uk. It is a very busy mailbox, so I can't promise that we will get back to you within the next day or two, but we will get back to you if you've got any questions or any concerns about your proposed research project and whether you're considering if it needs NRC approval or not. We can work with you to identify what you're planning on undertaking, and therefore whether it does need to come through NRC or not. But yes, thank you. Handing it back to the Insights team now.
Thank you, Karen. I'm just going to leave that slide up just for a couple more of a minute, just in case people want to jot down your email address. But now is the opportunity for you all to talk to us. So if you've got any questions or reflections or something that you would like to share at this point, handing over to you. So if you would like to come and talk to us, put your hand up. If not, we'll go through some of the questions that have already been submitted, but I'll give people 2 minutes to see if anyone wants to put their hand up and come in. No, in that case, Jill, would you like to give us some questions?
Certainly. So if we start off, there's been a few about funding. So will there be any research evaluation funding opportunities made available that link to these areas of interest?
So we've got to be, I'm going to be completely open and honest here. We are working in a time where funding and money is short, and we can't guarantee that there will actually be funding available, but what we can do is work together to maybe support applications for grants that you might be putting forward to undertake some of this research, so we can also give you opportunities to show how your work has impacted on policy and practice within HMPPS. I know that's not a very satisfactory answer at this point, but it goes back to what seems to be my mantra today. Get in touch with us, let's have a conversation, because there might be some situations where it might be possible, but I can't guarantee it. And realistically, the answer is probably no, but let's work together to see how we can deal with funding. Just check with Grace and Karen without putting you on the spot here. I'm assuming it's the same on the MOJ and the ARI side, but I'll just double check that. Don't want to talk for you.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Sinead. Yeah, reach out and have a conversation.
Fabulous. Thank you. Sorry, that's quite a grim starting question answer, but yeah.
Okay, over to the Q&A. Oh, someone's just snuck a hand up, so I'll let them come in first. Alex?
Oh yeah, thank you. This has been a really great session, and it's fantastic to hear about the priorities and about the process for the NRC. I suppose just one quick question on the NRC was about the role of business consultants. You said about how the proposals would go to business consultants who could have a view on whether or not this should get approved. And it'd just be good to hear a little bit more about what's meant by that. I mean, who are these businesses, and what kind of say would they have? Would they be tweaking research questions, or would they be, gatekeepers of saying this is or isn't appropriate research? So just a little bit more on that bit of the process would be really helpful. Thank you.
Sinead, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, are you okay to start and then I can come in? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alex, for your question. So just to clarify, it's not, when I say about business and policy, it's business teams within HMPPS and MOJ. So it's not going out to external businesses for their views. So what we would do is we would look at the subject matter and then assign the applications to those relevant policy leads. So for example, if the project was looking at wellbeing, we would then send it to the various wellbeing leads, whether that was for prisoner wellbeing or for staff wellbeing, and likewise across all the different policy or business areas. Sometimes it has helped to shape the research questions, so it can be mutually beneficial as well. So we've been able to put the researcher and those business and policy leads in touch with each other, because we've had some leads that have come back and said, it's interesting, but what we're really interested in is this, and is there any possibility that the research questions could be slightly amended and tweaked so that it kind of covers an area that we're particularly interested in? And in that case, we would we've put the researcher and the policy leads in touch with each other. So then, so it can help, as I said, it's sort of mutually beneficial. There are times when if a business or policy lead was to come back and decline an application, that wouldn't necessarily mean that the whole application was declined, because we would be looking at the reasons for that. And if that is the case, then we would go back to those policy leads and just sort of find out a little bit more about why they had that view about that project. So it could be around sort of particular sensitivities. It could be because there's already quite a lot of work going on in that area and they don't feel as if it's going to add particular value to the work that they're doing. There's a whole range of reasons there. So if they were to say no to a particular project, that doesn't necessarily mean that we automatically would then accept that, and that would be the final decision.
That's super helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And just to add to that, what I was talking about earlier about getting in touch with us and us linking you up with research with the strategy leads, but also business teams within HMPPS. If you take up that opportunity on board, then by the time you put in your NRC application, that you've already had those conversations. So that will also be a much smoother process there, because they'll already have talked to you and you'll have refined those questions before you even submit it as well. So hopefully that brings those two together as well. But thank you for the question. It's really helpful.
Okay, the next one you've sort of just already covered,
okay.
Sinead, and there has been quite a few. Who's the best person to reach out to initially to scope ideas and to start those conversations initially? And I would say it would be us, which we are going to provide all our contact details at the end of this, so you'll know where to come. But it's us. Am I right, Sinead?
You've answered it for me, Jill. Perfect. Yes. So
Other-
we have a functional mailbox. So if you reach out to that, which we will give at the end, then we can link you up with the right people. So yeah, so it's quite a straightforward answer. Get in touch with us and we will link you up. Thank you.
Okay, so how can we as academics make our research more of use? Is there a different format, structure, any key tips?
That's quite a very good question, whoever submitted that one. I think, going back to my broken record mantra, I think it's about just sharing your work with us, letting us know what you're doing, and then we can have conversations about the best way to get that learning and the information from your research out to people. I mentioned earlier about we can set up forums, we can set up and in collaboration with our MOJ colleagues as well, we can do as wide reach as possible. So let us know what you're doing, share what you're able to share with us. Let's have the conversations, and then because it's on a case-by-case basis, I think it's you know, we're always really interested in what the implications of research are and how we can apply that to practice within HMPPS. But if we start having those conversations, we'll get into a position where we can give you some tips, etc. But at the moment, I think it's more about letting us know what you're doing, and then we can go from there. But I will bring Grace and Karen in here in case you have any tips that you'd like to add. I know that there is from the NRC side, there is a summary document template that you can use to share your research when you've gone through the NRC. So that's something you could use as a starting point. But over to Grace and Karen, if there's anything you'd like to add from what I've said. No? I take.
Yeah, no, just to add, Sinead, I think you're right in terms of getting in touch and case by case basis of what's most appropriate. But I would say something that we always find impactful is kind of inviting people in to speak at things like academic seminars, and they're always really well attended. We facilitate a monthly seminar series, but I know there's lots more like ad hoc presentation and seminars as well. Or things like roundtables that bring together academics and policymakers around a sort of bigger body of research can be really impactful as well.
Thank you.
Another NRC question. If you want to research with young people supervised by yachts and yacht staff, does this require NRC or another form of approval?
If it's in the community, then that would need to go through the local yachts. For those that are in custody, and then yes, that would need to come through on an NRC form, and then those get reviewed by the youth custody service.
Great, thank you. Next one, is there any advice for balancing the need for co-production and rigour in methodology with the very real pressures in terms of resource and time this places on the prisons if wanting to do research with staff, those in prisons?
Sorry, can you read that out again, please?
Of course. Is there any advice for balancing the need for co-production and rigour in methodology with the very real pressures in terms of resource and time this places on the prisons if wanting to do research with staff and those in prisons?
So we have to be realistic. We know we've got evidence gaps. We know we need to address those evidence gaps in order to improve our practice. But we're also very aware of the real challenges that people that are working in our system are under on a day-to-day basis. And that increases challenges in terms of undertaking research. I will revert back to my comment before about talking to us and getting in touch with us when you want to do something, because the co-production bit, which is the ambition that we have both from the SOEN and the ARI, it's about working collaboratively together to meet our evidence gaps. If we start talking together, we can think about the work in a whole and how we can pool resources, etc., in these challenging times when it is really difficult on the front line and their day-to-day work, let alone facilitating research activity. But we can do something. So let's keep the conversation open and keep going that way. I apologize if I really haven't answered that question, but I think that's as far as I can go at this stage. Going back to talking to us, but also appreciating that you're right, it is a very, very difficult, challenging landscape that we're working in. Anyone else want to add anything? No, thank you.
Okay, moving on. How much buy-in is there from practitioners into the SOEN, and do staff actually know what's involved, and do they find it helpful, supportive and informative?
So staff are aware of the SOEN. Obviously, to be perfectly honest, there will be various, I guess, ranges of knowledge about what it entails, etc. But we tried to be as collaborative as we could in coming up with the questions that are within the SOEN. So it's an ongoing process of making sure that we're communicating with staff about the SOEN. And sorry, Jill, can you just remind me of the second part of that question?
Let me find it. And do they find it helpful, supportive and informative?
I think it's too early in the process right now to answer that second part of the question, hence why I was probably struggling to remember what it was. But we plan on constantly reviewing this. So I guess watch this space and we'll keep you informed about how useful staff find it. But thank you for the question. Sorry, I couldn't answer it completely.
Right, back to NRC. What is the process for utilising the Data First programme in the context of the NRC?
I'm hoping that Amy might be on the call and might be able to jump in on this one. But just so that NRC and Data First are quite separate. So again, I think it would be a conversation about what it is that you were hoping to achieve with the project, as to whether you would need to go through the Data First route or NRC, or whether you need to go through both. I think it depends on the different elements of that project. But Amy, I can see you come off on camera, so I don't know whether you can say a little bit more about the Data First side.
Yeah, I have. Thanks,
you.
Karen. So under Data First, we've shared, I think it's 8 data sets now, justice data sets linking people and cases from across the justice system through criminal, civil and family courts through to prisons and probation services. And those data sets are available for accredited researchers to access for research purposes. If you're seeking to access those data sets, you don't need to go via the NRC because it's covered by separate governance arrangements. I'll pop the Data First gov.uk page in the chat, but on that page you'll find an application form to seek to apply to access for that data. There's a user guide on the application form as well, and the Data First team can support researchers in identifying what are feasible research questions. So it's a separate process to the NRC if you're seeking access to data via Data First datasets. If you wanted to do a mixed method study where you want to use the admin data sets from Data First, but also, say, for example, wanted to interview prisoners, you'd still need to go via the NRC for that element of the research. But if it's just Data First, you don't need to do both.
Thank you.
Okay, one more question. In terms of evidence gaps you mentioned, what are the most pressing ones at the moment?
Well, that's quite a short answer, all of them, to be quite frank. And I know it's a lot and it can seem quite overwhelming when you look at a huge document like that and think, well, what is the most pressing? But all of it, and we really want to be evidence-led, evidence-informed within HMPPS. So anything that you can work with us on is 100% what we need from you. So so not a very sorry, another not very helpful answer, but it is all of it. So if you're interested in a particular area, then please do get in touch, and then we can have a conversation. But yeah, we're just delighted that you're here, that you're interested, and we really, really want to work with you. So thank you.
Have we got time for one more?
Just one more, yeah.
I recently submitted an NRC application for my PhD research. My university's knowledge around NRC applications was non-existent. I relied on some excellent networks I had formed to assist in guiding and supporting me through the process. Is there any work you could do with universities to educate on NRC to enable a more cohesive link with academics and NRC?
Thank you, Grace, for your question. Yes, absolutely, and we already do. So we do quite a few sessions with universities to give sort of expand on the presentation, I guess, that I've given today. So we'd go through sort of the process and then go into each of the different sections, different review criteria in more detail around sort of what would make a good application, and then have a chance for a Q&A. So you know, by all means, either the Grace or sort of opening it out to others on the call, you know, if you think that's something that would be helpful to your university or to your research network, please let us know. I will say we are a very small team. There is 2 of us, so we will, you know, if we do get a flood of requests coming in, that is absolutely great. You know, we're more than happy and really welcome the opportunity to be able to talk about the NRC process. You know, but we would need to sort of schedule those in. So yeah, but by all means, please reach out to us if you think that would be useful to either your university, your research group, your network, and we can yeah, we can arrange a talk, presentation, kind of what would best help your sort of students or kind of peers.
Thank you. So unless anyone else wants to put their hand up and come in, I think we'll start wrapping up today's session. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining today and for engaging in this session. We really, really, really do want to continue this conversation and keep working with you. So contact details are in the chat, but also on this slide here. So do get in touch if you think there's anything that should be in the SOEN that isn't, that you've got some ideas, you'd like us to link you up with the strategy leads or business leads in HMPPS. We want to hear from you. Let's keep on talking, keep on engaging with each other and building this evidence base. It's great to like I say, have you all here today. We do have a link here also to some feedback and for you to register your interest in future engagement events, which will might be much more targeted around SOEN areas. So please do take the time to do that as well. But other than that, I will finish by saying thank you to all the presenters that have been here today and come along, and thank you to each and every one of you for being here and your interest in the SOEN, and I look forward to hearing from you shortly. Take care, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.